The Galactic Council chamber was a place of cold light and colder politics. The walls shone with silver panels, and a dome above displayed a false sky that shifted slowly through alien constellations. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their tall chairs, each one carved to fit their own body shape. It was a place where pride and power decided the fate of empires. Humans were new here. They had only joined the council within the last 2 decades, and many still looked at them as if they were unruly children sitting at the table of adults. Their homeworld was seen as small, their lifespans short, their technology clever but not exceptional. Yet humans had something that made the older races uneasy. They had spread fast, adapted fast, and resisted pressures that crushed others. Commander Elias Ward stood at the human seat. He was tall by human standards, with calm gray eyes and the steady posture of a soldier used to storms. His uniform was simple navy blue, but the clean lines and worn metals spoke of battles fought on dusty colonies and pirate-infested frontiers. He did not carry himself with arrogance, only quiet strength. Across from him sat the Veyari delegation. They were a fox-like people, sleek in form with long ears, sharp teeth, and amber eyes that glowed in the dim light. Their clothing shimmered with fine silks, and their tails moved behind them in slow waves that showed amusement or contempt. Among them was Lord Varric, a sly diplomat whose family had ruled their sector for centuries. The Veyari had no love for humanity. To them, humans were noisy, sentimental, and far too reckless. The council gathering today was supposed to be about a new trade route through contested space. But Varric had prepared something else, something cruel. He rose, flashing sharp teeth in what passed for a smile. "Honored council and representatives of Earth," he said in a smooth voice. "The Veyari come today not only to speak of trade, but also to offer a gift." The word echoed in the chamber. Gifts were rare in this hall. Gifts were political tools. 2 Veyari guards stepped forward. Between them walked a young woman with fur the color of burnt gold and ears pinned flat against her head. She wore plain clothes, her tail tucked low. Her eyes, narrow silver blue, did not lift from the floor. "This," Varric continued, "is my daughter Serene. She is unworthy of my house. Too soft, too quiet, too unlike her proud kin. And so in honor of humanity's place among us, I give her to you, Commander Elias Ward. Take her as a servant, or a pet, or throw her away as you will. It makes little difference." A ripple of laughter spread among some alien delegates. Others whispered, tails twitching or antennae trembling. A gift wife. Among the Veyari, it was an insult beyond measure. To give away a daughter was to declare she had no value, and to give her to a human, an upstart race, was to say that humans deserved only scraps. Sarian's hands trembled as she stood there. Her heart hammered in her chest. She knew this was her fate the moment her father had called her worthless, but the sting of being offered to a stranger, worse, a human, cut deeper than any blade. All eyes turned to Elias. Many expected him to grow angry, to lash out, to humiliate himself. Some thought he would refuse, storm away, and thus weaken humanity's standing. Others thought he would accept with arrogance, proving himself crude. But Elias did neither. He stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He looked at the young Veyari woman, then at the council, and finally at Lord Varric. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and steady. "In my people's culture," Elias said, "no life is a joke. No daughter is worthless. If you give her into my care, then she will not be a servant nor a pet. She will be treated with respect. That is my word." The laughter died. Silence fell across the chamber. Lord Varric's smile stiffened. This was not the reaction he had hoped for. "Perhaps you misunderstand, human," he said with a flick of his tail. "She is useless to us, a burden. You do me a kindness by taking her." Elias held his gaze unshaken. "Then it is settled. She will come with me." The council shifted uneasily. What had been meant as humiliation had instead turned into something strange, something dangerous. Sarian lifted her eyes for the first time. She expected cruelty in the human's face. Instead, she saw only calm determination, a kind of quiet dignity she had never seen even among her own kind. Something inside her stirred, something that whispered of fear and curiosity at once. The council moved on, though tension lingered like smoke. The trade routes were discussed, agreements signed, and disputes smoothed over. But for the rest of the day, whispers followed Sarian and Elias. Some delegates sneered. Others looked thoughtful, and the Veari glared with barely hidden rage. When the meeting ended, Elias led Sarine to the docking bays. His ship, the Resolute, waited there. The crew stood ready to welcome their commander, but their eyes widened when they saw the fox-like woman walking at his side. "This is Sarine," Elias said simply. "She will be staying with us." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. Some smirked, some frowned, and a few muttered under their breath. A gift wife from aliens? They saw it as an insult, a joke played on their commander. But Elias's tone allowed no argument. He guided Sarine to a private cabin, small but neat, with a bed, a desk, and a window looking out into the stars. "You are safe here," he told her. "No one will harm you under my command. You'll have food, space, and choice. That is more than what was given to you." Sarine stared at him, ears flicking in confusion. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you not throw me away as they expected?" Elias shrugged slightly. "Because that is not what humans do." For the first time in years, Sarine felt something other than shame. She felt confusion, yes, but also a spark of something she dared not name. Hope. Days passed aboard the Resolute. Sarine kept to herself at first, wary of every glance from the human crew. They whispered about her in the mess hall. They joked behind her back. Some pitied her, others mocked her. Yet Elias treated her the same as he did any member of the ship. He did not coddle her, but he did not demean her either. He asked her questions about Veari culture, about her people's customs, about their politics. At first she gave short, stiff answers, but slowly she realized he was not mocking her. He listened. He respected her words. One evening, as the ship drifted between stars, Sarine stood at the window of her cabin. Elias came to check on her. "You miss your home," he said quietly. Sarine shook her head. "Home? No, my home never wanted me. My father called me weak. My sisters laughed at me. To them I was already nothing." Elias studied her for a long moment. Then he said, "Among humans, worth is not given by birth. It is proven by what you choose to do." She turned to look at him, searching his face for mockery, but found none. His words lingered in her mind long after he left. Weeks passed, and Sarine began to notice things. The humans worked hard, laughed loudly, and argued fiercely. Yet they also helped each other without being asked. They treated each life as precious, even when resources were scarce. They had flaws, yes, but also a strange strength. One day, a group of junior officers mocked her openly in the hall, calling her the fox joke. Elias appeared suddenly, his eyes like cold steel. "On this ship," he said in a voice that silenced them instantly, "no one is a joke, dismissed." The crew scattered, and Sarine was left staring at him, stunned. No one had ever defended her like that before. That night, for the first time, she allowed herself to sit at the mess table with the others. She did not speak much, but she sat there and no one dared mock her again. Yet whispers from beyond the ship grew louder. Other Veari heard of what had happened. Lord Varric seethed that his insult had been turned into an unintended alliance. And in the shadows of the council, other species began to wonder. Perhaps humanity was not so weak after all. Perhaps giving them a daughter meant something far greater than a joke. And as Sarine lay awake one night in her cabin, she realized her life had shifted in ways she could not yet understand. She had been given away as worthless, but here, among humans, she might find a worth no one had ever granted her. Her story was only beginning. Life aboard the Resolute slowly shifted for Sarine. At first she felt like a shadow, someone who did not belong, but humans had a strange way of drawing others into their rhythm. They laughed loudly, worked side by side, argued fiercely, and yet always seemed to forgive. They were loud and clumsy compared to the graceful Veari, but their warmth carried a strength she could not ignore. Sarine had expected coldness or cruelty from them, but instead she saw moments of quiet kindness. A young technician once dropped her tools and muttered nervously when Sarine bent to help her. Another time, an older officer politely explained how the food dispensers worked when she stood confused before one. Slowly, the small walls around her heart began to crack, yet not everyone welcomed her. Whispers still followed her in the halls. Some crew members saw her as a symbol of insult, a reminder that their commander had been mocked. Others feared her fox-like features and sharp eyes, whispering that she might be a spy. Through all of it, Commander Elias Ward remained the same, calm, steady, and unwavering. He treated her neither as a burden nor as a treasure, but as a person. When he asked her opinion in meetings, some scoffed, but Elias ignored them. And when she gave an answer, he listened. One quiet evening, Sarine stood in the observation bay, staring out at a distant nebula that glowed like a veil of fire. Elias joined her as he often did after his duties. "You're learning our ways quickly," he said, his voice even. Sarian's tail flicked nervously. "I only watch. Your people are strange to me. You speak so openly, even to leaders. Among the Veari, silence is safer." Elias folded his hands behind his back. "Perhaps. But silence doesn't build trust. We argue because we want to understand each other. Sometimes the arguments are loud, but they make us stronger." Sarine tilted her head. She thought of her father's court, where silence was the rule and cruelty was the language of power. The difference struck her more deeply than she expected. "Do you miss your people?" Elias asked quietly. She hesitated before shaking her head. "No, my people never wanted me, but sometimes I miss what I thought family should be." Elias glanced at her. "Then maybe you'll find it here." His words stayed with her long after he left. The chance to prove herself came sooner than expected. Weeks later, as the Resolute traveled through the contested fringe sectors, an alarm tore through the ship. Red lights flashed and the calm hum of engines was drowned out by sirens. "Raiders incoming," the tactical officer shouted. 3 ships on intercept. The raiders were a mix of outlaw species, desperate, vicious, and merciless. They preyed on cargo ships and colonies, leaving ruins in their wake. And now they had set their sights on the Resolute. Elias took command with calm precision. Orders flew across the bridge as the crew scrambled to battle stations. Sarine stood near the back, heart racing. She had no training for this, no place among soldiers. Yet as she listened to the enemy chatter intercepted on the comms, her ears twitched. "They are Veari dialect," she whispered. Elias turned his head. "You understand them?" Sarine nodded quickly. "Yes, they are arguing. Their leader is reckless. They want to board, but the second-in-command is warning against it. If you push them, they will break apart." The crew stared at her, surprised. Elias's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "What would you suggest?" Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to speak. "Do not fight to destroy. Fight to frighten. Show strength, not slaughter. Their leader will push, but his followers will scatter if they fear a trap." Elias considered this for only a heartbeat before nodding. "Helm, adjust our course. Tactical, target engines, not hulls. Make it look like we want them alive." The battle raged in flashes of light and the rumble of weapons. True to Sarian's words, the raider leader shouted for blood. But when the Resolute crippled one ship's engines without destroying it, panic spread. The second-in-command turned his vessel away, and soon the raiders scattered into the void. Silence fell on the bridge. Slowly, eyes turned toward Sarine. "You saved us," one officer whispered. Elias gave a small nod. "No, she guided us, and we listened." For the first time, the crew looked at Sarine not as a burden, but as someone who belonged. After the battle, life aboard the Resolute changed. Crew members began asking Sarine questions about alien cultures. Some came to her for advice when dealing with non-human traders. A few even laughed with her during meals. She was no longer the fox joke. She was something else now. One evening, in the mess hall, a group of younger crew members gathered around her as she told them stories of Veari legends. Tales of fox spirits that guided lost travelers, and of clever mothers who defended their dens with wit rather than claws. When the story ended, one human engineer chuckled. "You sound like a mother fox yourself, looking out for us." The nickname spread quickly. Soon the crew affectionately called her the Fox Mother. At first, Sarine flushed with embarrassment whenever she heard it, but slowly she began to accept it. The name felt warm. Her bond with Elias also grew stronger. Though their conversations were often simple, a quiet trust built between them. He asked her advice not because of politics, but because he valued her perspective. She found herself drawn to his calm presence, his steady gaze, his refusal to treat her as less than human. One night, after a long shift, Elias walked her back to her cabin. She paused at the door, tail curling with nervous energy. "You changed my fate," she whispered. Elias frowned slightly. "No, you're changing it yourself. I only gave you space to do it." She looked at him then, her silver blue eyes meeting his gray ones. For a long moment no words passed between them, and yet something deeper was spoken in silence. Months passed. The Resolute continued its patrols, and Sarien became a part of its life. She advised on alien encounters, taught humans about Vayari customs, and even began to smile when crew members teased her gently. But one quiet morning, as she sat alone in her cabin, she felt a shift within her. At first she thought it was only sickness, perhaps stress from long travel. But as days passed, the truth settled over her with undeniable certainty. She was carrying a child. Sarien sat frozen, her hands pressed against her stomach. 1,000 thoughts stormed through her mind. Fear, confusion, wonder. A child of two worlds. A child born of insult and accident, yet filled with possibility. When she finally told Elias, his expression remained steady, but his eyes softened with something rare, something like awe. "We will protect the child," he said firmly, "no matter what anyone says." Sarien's ears lowered, her tail curling around herself. "The galaxy will hate this child. The Vayari will call it shame. Others will call it unnatural. Then let them," Elias answered. "What matters is that the child will live, and it will be ours to raise, not theirs to judge." For the first time in her life, Sarien felt tears sting her eyes. She had been given away as worthless, but here she stood, about to bring forth a life that could change everything. Word of the pregnancy spread quickly. The crew, once divided, now treated her with fierce loyalty. They called her not just the Fox Mother, but the Mother of the Future. But beyond the Resolute, whispers turned to storms. The Vayari were outraged, calling the Union an insult to their bloodline. Some demanded the child be destroyed. Others mocked humanity for daring to mix blood with their kind. Yet among smaller, weaker species, a different whisper grew. If humans and Vayari could unite, perhaps others could too. Perhaps the galaxy did not have to be ruled by old pride and old chains. And so, as Sarien walked the halls of the Resolute, one hand resting on her stomach, she felt both fear and hope. The child within her was fragile, yet already powerful. Her enemies would try to erase it. Her people would call it shame. But her heart whispered a different truth. This child was not a joke. It was the heir of a future the galaxy could not yet imagine. The Resolute moved quietly through the void, but its silence carried weight. Rumors had spread faster than the ship's engines could fly. Across the galaxy, species whispered of the child growing inside Sarien. To the Vayari, it was an abomination. To many in the council, it was a dangerous experiment that might destabilize old balances of power. Yet to others, especially smaller worlds who had long lived under the shadow of stronger empires, it was a spark of hope. If a human and a Vayari could unite, perhaps unity was not only a dream. Sarien felt the weight of those whispers with every step. Her days were filled with cautious smiles from the crew, protective glances from soldiers, and endless thoughts about the life she carried. At night she lay awake, one hand on her stomach, listening to the hum of the engines and wondering if her child would ever see a safe world. Elias, steady as always, never faltered. "We protect what is ours," he told her again and again. His calm voice was an anchor when storms of doubt threatened to pull her under. But storms soon came. The first attempt was subtle. While docked at a neutral station for resupply, Sarien walked with 2 guards through the bustling market halls. She paused to admire a cluster of star lanterns, their lights glowing like captured suns. Suddenly her ears twitched. A scent sharp and bitter filled her nose. She turned just as a cloaked figure slipped through the crowd. A flash of metal glinted in his hand. "Assassin!" One guard shouted. The attack came swift, but humans were swifter. The guard intercepted the blade, and Elias himself appeared from the crowd, slamming the attacker to the ground with a soldier's precision. The assassin snarled, revealing fox-like teeth. Vayari. Sarien's heart pounded as the would-be killer was dragged away. Her tail curled tight around her legs. She knew then that her father's house would never let her child live. "They will keep sending them," she whispered to Elias that night, fear heavy in her voice. Elias rested a hand on hers. "Then we will keep stopping them. They underestimate us. That's their mistake." But Sarien wondered how long strength and vigilance could hold against endless hate. The second attempt was not subtle at all. Weeks later, the Resolute received orders to attend a council summit on Andor Prime. It was to discuss border disputes, but everyone knew the true reason. The council wanted to see the Fox Mother and the child she carried. The Resolute docked at the shining station above Andor Prime, its silver towers glittering against the curve of the planet below. Crowds gathered, some in curiosity, others in anger. Inside the Grand Hall, representatives sat in their carved thrones, eyes sharp and voices ready. The air hummed with tension. Lord Varric of the Veyari stood at the center, his fur bristling with fury. "This union is a stain on my people," he declared. His amber eyes burned toward Sarine. "You shame your bloodline. That child must not be born," whispers spread like wildfire. Some nodded in agreement. Others shook their heads. Elias stepped forward, his voice steady. "With respect, your judgment means nothing. This child is ours. It is not a crime to live," Varric's teeth flashed. "Humans think themselves clever. But you do not understand. Such a child could upset the balance of power. It will be hunted, hated, destroyed. For its own sake, it should never exist." Before Elias could answer, Sarine stepped forward. Her voice was soft at first, but it carried across the chamber. "My father gave me away as a joke," she said. "He called me worthless. But among humans I found respect. I found family. And now I carry a life that is not shame but hope. You may call it weakness. You may call it shame. But I will call it my child. And I will defend it with all I am." The hall fell silent. Even her father's glare faltered for a heartbeat. Then the violence came. From the shadows of the hall, figures leapt forward. Armed assassins, blades drawn, eyes filled with cold purpose. The chamber erupted in chaos. Humans of the Resolute rushed to shield their commander and Sarine. Other delegates scrambled to safety, some shouting in outrage, others in fear. The assassins lunged for Sarine. But Elias stood firm, weapon drawn, cutting them down with trained precision. Sarine ducked behind a column, but when one assassin broke through the line, she acted. Her instincts flared, the cunning of her people rising at last. With a sharp cry, she grabbed a fallen staff and struck, her tail lashing as she knocked the attacker off balance. The crew finished the job, but the sight of her standing tall, protecting not only herself but her unborn child, seared into every watching eye. The fight ended quickly, but the message lingered. The Veyari had tried to kill her, not once but openly in the council chamber, and she had not cowered. In the days that followed, the council could not agree. Some demanded punishment for the attack. Others called for her child's removal. The galaxy balanced on a knife's edge, but something had shifted. News of the attack spread to colonies and border worlds. Tales of the Fox Mother circulated among traders and soldiers. They spoke of a woman once given as a joke who now stood tall beside humans, carrying a future no assassin could erase. On smaller worlds, people began to hope. If a human and a Veyari could stand together, perhaps old hatreds did not have to rule forever. One night, as the Resolute prepared to leave Andor Prime, Sarine stood in her cabin, staring out at the stars. Elias entered quietly, as he often did. "They will keep coming," she whispered, her hand on her stomach. "Yes," Elias said, "but so will we. We will not run. We will raise this child together, and no one will laugh at us again." Sarine turned to him, her eyes wet but steady. "Do you truly believe this child can change the galaxy?" Elias gave a small smile. "The galaxy has already changed. They called you worthless. Now they call you Fox Mother. That is enough proof for me." She let out a soft breath, her tail curling around her. For the first time, she believed it too. Months later, when the child was finally born aboard the Resolute, the ship fell into silence. Crew members who had once mocked now stood guard outside her cabin, refusing to let danger near. Officers who had once doubted now spoke softly of the child as though it were a treasure. And when the infant opened its eyes for the first time, eyes that shone silver blue with hints of human, Grey Sarine wept. This was no joke. This was no shame. This was the heir of a new age. The galaxy did not suddenly transform overnight. Hatred still lingered. Threats still waited. But stories spread faster than fleets. And the story of the Fox Mother and her child traveled from station to station, from world to world. A daughter once discarded had become a matriarch. A joke had become a legend. And humanity, once mocked as weak, now stood with heads held high. Because in the end, no life was worthless. And sometimes the future is born from the ones no one expected.